Back with the Joe Rogan not documentary. Conspiracy theory. So hold on. If we did one, two, three, I mean we got 12 more left. I'm gonna just do 3 more, I guess. Or 2 more. This one looks long as shit. Damn. Damn. We already did the moon landing, I thought. Space is fake with that shit. I don't know. I'm making this feel way longer than it need to be.
These next conspiracies, on the other hand, Joe believes wholeheartedly. Take a listen. Up next, Joe Rogan explains the theories about ancient advanced civilizations in the Amazon to his guest.
This beat made me want to pop them bust off me.
This is a conversation from episode 1293 with Andrew Santino.
Dude, it was one of the most amazing podcasts I've ever done. To listening to that guy tell this story. I had this guy, Graham Hancock, on, and he was talking to me about all the different shit that they're finding in the Amazon and in South America, and that there used to be 20 million people that lived in the Amazon, and they died off because of sickness.
Rogan goes on to explain exactly how these scientists are finding
that actually be some crazy shit. It was 20 million niggas. If it was 20 million people that lived in the Amazon, they all just died off because of sickness.
evidence of the lost civilizations.
Apparently Europeans, when they came in like the 1500s, they would tell these incredible stories about these huge civilizations in the Amazon. But then when explorers came back 200 years later, there was nothing there. And they were like, this is crazy. They lied. They must have lied. But it turns out they didn't lie. What happened was smallpox ran through the fucking jungle and killed everybody.
We did it.
And then the jungle...
What is smallpox? I need to know what that shit is.
Just overtook these cities, and now they're finding these cities with something called LiDAR. They use these planes and they circle over this area, or helicopters, whatever the fuck they do, and they shoot this shit down, this LiDAR.
What Rogan is talking about here is LiDAR, or laser imaging, detection and ranging technology. LiDAR works by using a laser to determine the range between a targeted object and the laser projection system. LiDAR 3D scanning is a combination of 3D scanning and LiDAR scanning, which is used to create high-res maps and even 3D models of the Earth's surface. Listen to what Rogan says next.
And it shows them all these crazy structures, all these like roadways and irrigation systems and circles inside of a square. Like, it was villages and cities, and millions of people probably lived there.
All right, I'm pretty gullible. I will say that. But this seems pretty, true.
Look at it. That's all the stuff they're finding now.
What?
Yeah. And all of it was swallowed up by the jungle. They think within like
It's not that far off that people live there.
100 years just vanished in the jungle.
Wow.
Because it's so lush and tropical down there.
If these huge advanced civilizations were hidden in only a few hundred years, what else do you think is there that we just haven't found yet? Andrew Santino even mentions it's like the finding of Atlantis.
This is like the findings of Atlantis, right? Like when they started finding... You started finding more and more land underground.
Up next, a unique theory and explanation surrounding Atlantis fascinates the mind of Joe Rogan. This is a conversation from episodes 1742 and 1928 with Jimmy Corsetti.
I think that Atlantis, because surely that wouldn't have been necessarily the name just through like the change of language, over, let's say 12, 13,000 years ago, which would be the time frame. So like surely there would be several different changes of language, but I think it represented a civilization that was doing great things. They were more global than what many people think would be possible. Atlantis was said to be a kingdom made up of, or an empire, made up of 10 kingdoms. And then there was the lost city of Atlantis, which was the capital.
Take a look at this map, published in 1669, that places Atlantis directly in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. While the location might not be entirely accurate, Corsetti goes on to share his theory of what could have happened.
And essentially that they were obliterated by a cataclysm, as passed down by Plato, although it's worth mentioning that Plato got the story of Atlantis from Solon, who was his uncle separated by 6 generations. But what most people don't realize is that Solon had traveled to Egypt And so it's the ancient Egyptians is where that tale comes from.
Look at this. Apparently, the Egyptians had told Solon that Atlantis had existed nearly 9,000 years before he even traveled to Egypt, which would
I'm confused.
make sense why any remains are so hard to locate now. After Corsetti mentions some circles that made up part of Atlantis, Rogan pulls it up.
Jamie, will you pull up the photos of these concentric circles? Tell him.
Yeah, the Richat, R-I-C-H-A-T. It's worth mentioning
he's
that.
got it already here.
Yeah, in the
Now-
first couple, I just want to say it's Richat. I used to call it Ricot. I was mispronouncing it. But let me ask you this, Joe, real quick. When you saw my video, was that the very first time you had ever seen this thing
Yes,
before?
yeah.
That's the thing. So many. When I first saw this, I was like, "What the f is that?" By the way, you see that white?
That's exactly what I'm thinking. What the fuck is that?
All those white blemishes? That's salt.
Excuse me.
What's even more shocking is how large the Richat is. Just take a look at this view from space that shows it visible even at that distance. Rogan then asks if there are any other natural explanations for the Richat existing.
Is there a natural explanation for
Yes.
this formation?
Yes. So let me say that it is considered to be mysterious. They're not 100% certain of it. However, the consensus is that it was a volcanic dome that had risen and collapsed multiple times, like 100 million years ago, allegedly.
They end their discussion on Atlantis here, but a little over a year later, Jimmy Corsetti comes back on during episode number 1928 and presents his updated theory on the lost city.
So let's just get into it.
Let's do it. So the Richat structure, I was on your show a little over a year ago and shared some details.
Okay, so the Richat is like a map of Atlantis. Then, I'm not really lost, but like I'm following. I'm locked in. Be saying nothing because I'm locked in. But like, lock in. All right.
Details about it. It's a site that astronauts typically use to reference from space. It is a geological feature that is said to be volcanic in nature. And what's so spectacular about this is that it just so happens to match more than a dozen striking similarities to what Plato had described as the lost ancient capital city of Atlantis.
These similarities that Corsetti is mentioning include the fact that it follows the 3-to-2 ring ratio described, the fact Plato described Atlantis as being made of islands separated by moats, and even the bullseye design. Corsetti then goes into much more detail, even diving into the Atlas mountain chain, as you can see here.
From what you had the last time you were on the podcast to what you put out now, it's even more compelling.
And furthermore, it was said to have mountains to the north, and you just so happen to have mountains called the Atlas mountain chain, which Atlas was said to be the very first king of Atlantis. And what's interesting is that the very first known king of Mauritania, which is where the Richat structure is located, is also, their very first known king was also named Atlas. And though I'm not saying that that's the same individual, but what we do today is we pass down names, right? Like people like, oh, my dad's name's John, and so is my son. And so it's another striking similarity, but it goes further than that.
He then explains that Atlantis has geological similarities, such as the red, black, and white colored stone, and the abundance of gold. According to the legends, Atlantis had an abundance of gold, and that the outer walls were even lined with this precious metal. But listen to this.
And it turns out that Mauritania is loaded with gold, and not only that, the richest person ever known to exist in all of mankind is
See how he black? Get into that bag.
Mansa Musa of the Mali Empire, which consisted partly of modern-day Mauritania.
He's not exaggerating about how rich Mansa Musa was. Just look at these numbers compared to how rich Elon Musk is today. According to scientific sources, Musa had between $400 billion and $500 billion in today's dollars at the time of his reign.
But another little detail that most people aren't aware of, because
He was a bag chaser. Bro, what the hell?
they think of Atlantis like, oh, it must be at the bottom of the ocean. Well, that's not exactly how Plato worded it. He did describe that the aftermath of Atlantis followed a catastrophic event involving water, is that what was left of Atlantis was reeds of grass and a shoal of mud that prevented ships from navigating to and from. And what people don't realize is that Sahara Africa, up until about 4,500 to 5,000 years ago, was totally green.
Just look at this. Even according to university researchers, as little as 6,000 years ago, the Sahara was tropical and received plentiful rainfall. Corsetti then explains that there is ample evidence the ocean
So the Sahara Desert was the Sahara jungle.
blasted through the Sahara Desert even recently in our history, saying this.
Whether it existed or not, the evidence that we're going to chat about today to show you that there is conclusive evidence, I would say, that catastrophic water erosion, that the ocean had blasted through the Sahara tens of millions of years more recently than previously known.
The craziest part about this theory
Do you think in tens of millions of years, we'll say that they'll say that this fuck! They'll say that this, I know this shit was real. You think that, is that what's going on? I don't know.
is that when you actually line up the evidence that's available, the ancient Egyptian history lines up directly with more modern geological evidence that points to cataclysms that would have taken place at the same time Atlantis supposedly fell. Just listen to this.
Because it seems clear that they've inherited some things from the past. That's a story they themselves tell.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that the story of Atlantis had come from Egypt.
That's one of the most bizarre parts about it. I didn't know this until just a few years ago either. It's like, oh, wait a second. Plato, his distant relative Solon had traveled there in search of knowledge because Egypt was the place to go for it. And
yeah, it was the priests of the Delta that told Solon. And they said that, so 6,000 years, or 9,000 years, prior to the time of Solon was when the sinking of this city happened. And that works out to be 9,600 BC, so 11,600 years ago, which is bang on exactly where now the geological evidence points to basically the end of the Younger Dryas cataclysms. Like we know something happened at the start at like 12,800, 900 years, and then 11,600 years ago was that end of the Younger Dryas that brought us up out of the cold spell and into the Holocene.
There's so much evidence.
I don't know what they're talking about. I might have to do a whole lot of my own research because I'm like half confused on like half of the shit they're talking about. But it seems like they got some pretty damning evidence.
That just lines up, this theory could very well be possible. It's no surprise that even Rogan admits it all makes sense.
All of it is so astonishing, and it all fits into place. It all makes sense.
Up next, Joe Rogan explains one of the creepiest conspiracies out there involving the moon landing on his podcast with Ben Askren on MMA's show number 12.
The press conference from 1969 when they returned from the moon is one of the most cryptic, weird things you'll ever see. These guys look like they just stole something and they're being questioned. I've never seen a video where people look like they're more full of shit than that video of the press conference from 1969. It's weird, man. It's weird. They're like fidgety and looking nervous, like they're getting away with something.
So they didn't do it then?
They might have done it.
Like Joe goes on to say, they also might not have done it. Look at these images of the moon landing, such as this one showing that the flag isn't casting a shadow, or this photo that theories claim shows a stagehand that would prove the landing was faked. But listen to what Rogan says next, because there are other explanations.
Like what I said last video. Fake. The flag was blown. Ain't no air in space.
They could have done it, but there's a lot of weirdness with the moon landing. It's if you wanted to have like a conspiracy that to wrap your head around that's exciting, it's one of the best ones.
Askren asks who would benefit from the conspiracy theory, and Joe Rogan explains.
The United States government did because it showed military superiority over the Russians, so we were able to do that.
Sure.
It also, it was the Nixon administration. People were just flat out full of shit.
Well, yeah.
I mean, they were just lying to people left and right back then.
That's government, though.
Yeah, but even more so then because it was unchecked. There was no media.
Social media.
Yeah, there's nothing that would expose them for this. And this stuff, they would air it on TV once in 1969. You never see it again.
Joe Rogan is about to explain a conspiracy involving NASA astronauts and trampolines. But before he does, watch this. This is real footage of NASA astronauts playing a game called Spaceball, which was invented as a training method for NASA astronauts using a trampoline. Despite this, the first time astronauts landed on the moon, it didn't look anything like a low-gravity environment.
Astronauts on trampolines video. That's my favorite one. You watch that and you go, what in the f*** is happening there? These guys are bouncing up in the air. Like, how are they doing that? Like, they never did. If you watch Apollo 11 when they were moving around on the surface of the moon, it's just like they're moving in slow motion. And then you go to whatever it was, like Apollo 14 or 15 when they were doing the trampoline thing. They're just flying through the air. Have you seen it?
The last moon landing was in December 1972 when Eugene Cernan supposedly walked on the moon. But this video Rogan is about to play shows some very suspicious reactions and behavior from the astronauts who landed on the moon before this.
Watch these guys bounce up in the air. It's like they're...
I think the moon landing was fake. I already said this shit, bro. I think we see this astronauts on trampolines video, which makes me think even more that this probably gonna be proved correct that I was right.
They're on some sort of wire, like they're being yanked up into the air.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what the f are they doing? And they're playing, like falling down, and it's very weird. But it could have been that they were really on the moon, and these guys were cowboys and yahoos, and they wanted to bounce around.
Rogan then goes on to explain why the flag looks so stiff in the video, and theorizes about why there are videos of it moving. Take a look at this photo of the flag, and pay attention to how still it
Thank you. Finally, somebody said it.
looks.
Well, the flag had a wire, first of all, on the top of it that stiffened it up
He's stiffer than me on Sundays.
to make it. But there's videos of the flag moving in a non-existent breeze, which is weird too. And
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying,
they try to make some
bro. The flag it would just flap down like me on a Sunday.
logical explanations for why the flag could be moving in a vacuum, and some of it makes sense, but some of it doesn't. Like the wires one is weird. If you watch them fall
Look at that rod.
down, like go to that one right there, Jamie. You like if you watch, like sometimes they're falling down, and when they're falling down, it looks like they get yanked back up.
Rogan is about to show some footage of the moon landing that makes zero
Let me
sense.
see.
Yanked back. If you watch, like sometimes they're falling down, and when they're falling down, it looks like they get yanked. If you watch, like sometimes they're falling down, and when they're falling down, if you watch, like sometimes they're falling down, and when they're falling down, it looks like they get yanked back up.
Kind of see that.
Rogan is about to show some footage of the moon landing that makes zero sense. Take a look at this image. A man who weighs roughly 200 pounds or 90 kilograms on Earth would weigh only 33.2 pounds or 15 kilograms on the moon.
Damn.
Still, even weighing that much less doesn't explain this footage.
But I think it might not have been real footage. What they might have done is use some test footage, like right there, Jamie, right there, let it go. Like homeboy falls down, and then it looks like he gets yanked back up. Look at this. Whoops.
Oh, he did not. That's
Like, what
not
is
him
that?
standing up.
Yeah, what is this?
That's not
Look.
him standing up. You can't stand up like that.
Right, but you're on the moon, okay?
No,
so you realize you're in
no.
1/6 Earth.
That's not him standing up. You can't stand up like that.
Right, but you're on the moon, okay?
No,
so you realize you're in
no.
1/6 Earth's gravity.
But there was nothing to make him go like this.
Exactly. So you realize, what is this?
That's not
Look.
him standing.
Yanked back up. Look at this. Whoops.
Oh, he did not. That's
Like, what
not
is
him
that?
standing up.
Yeah, what is this?
It definitely do look weird, but then again, none of us has never been to the moon, so we don't know what it's like up there. So
That's not
Look.
him standing up. You can't stand up like that.
Right, but you're on the moon, okay?
No,
so you realize you're in
no.
1/6 Earth's gravity.
But there was nothing to make him go like this.
Exactly.
Right? You can't get
Right.
up without.
Exactly. I think it's entirely possible that some of the footage was bullshit.
Other theories also claim that the astronauts faked the moon landing underwater. Look at this video of a man on a submarine opening a
I really think that like half of it was bullshit and half of it was like real moon landing type shit. You feel me? I don't know, cause the videos I just seen just right here. That's why I wasn't talking, bro. Cause I'm really trying to look and see bullshit. But you know, 69. I don't know, bro. Maybe the shit was real. I ain't got no fucking. I have no.
soda can and watch how the soda reacts. Rogan explains that it's possible the moon landing was real, but some of the footage was from simulations.
They were using that to simulate what it would be like, because they definitely filmed a lot of simulations. They did a lot of that because they wanted to prepare the astronauts. It's entirely possible that some of those simulations got passed off as being an actual video of them on the moon.
Sure.
Yeah.
Fair
Or-
enough.
Up next, Joe Rogan is presented with Graham Hancock's theory about Antarctica, where he reveals that Antarctica might be different than we know today. This is a conversation from episode 1897.
When you go back to what you think are the origins of sophisticated civilization, how far back are we talking?
One of the things I find most striking is the presence of Antarctica on a
That's not his fucking question.
ancient maps because we didn't discover it until 1820, and yet it's on maps drawn in the 1500s with great detail, which again were based on much older source maps that have now been lost to us.
Here, Hancock is talking about the Pinkerton world map. Look at this. The map, which was created by John Pinkerton in 1812, doesn't show Antarctica at all, but instead just shows an empty hole where it's supposed to be. Listen to what Hancock has to say about this.
Based on the latest exploration data at that time, and where Antarctica is, it just shows a hole where Antarctica is. Because it was an honest map. Nobody had found it by then. But if you go back to, for example, the Wolsey-Muller world map drawn in 1530 or thereabouts, you find Antarctica is present. If you can find Wolsey-Muller world map, it would be worth taking a look at. That map shows Antarctica exactly where it should be. And it shows it, there we go, right-hand side. There's Antarctica at the tip of South America.
Oh shit. It's right here. Thing is fuck. But this one right here. Antarctica.
Just south of South Africa.
The map he's talking about here is the Orientius Phineas world map, found in the Library of Congress in 1960. And look at this. Drawn in 1531, the map actually does show Antarctica as a continent. Rogan quickly asks what it was called, and Hancock explains.
Well, they call it the Southern Land. And it's larger than it is today, but it was larger than it is today during the Ice Age. Antarctica was a much bigger. Now, what the f is it doing on a map drawn in the 1500s, which we know was based on older source maps when nobody knew it existed in the 1500s? To me, the obvious answer is we are dealing with the fingerprints of a lost civilization that mapped the world and that left evidence of that mapping, which ancient map makers found and used and incorporated into their map.
See this map? The most fascinating part of these maps is that if you zoom in and look closely, Antarctica actually appears to be free of ice, green, and most importantly, has several significant rivers mapped onto it. Hancock explains it by saying this.
These maps can be very confusing because they were trying to mix exploration data from their own period with data from the older maps. But when you look at these maps in depth, they're very, very intriguing.
Next up, Rogan argues the simulation theory with the show's guest. This is a conversation from episode 1113 with Dennis McKenna.
This is the sign of the simulation. Have you considered the simulation theory?
Yes.
Might be real. I mean,
Well, sometimes I do wonder. I mean, it's like reality, whatever we choose to call it, is becoming so weird that I often ask myself, who is writing this shit?
The simulation theory is exactly what it sounds like.
No cap. Pen and pad just going stupid, nigga.
It's possible we live in a simulation, and even potentially more likely than living in the real world.
We didn't hit that mark, folks. I ain't gonna lie. I was getting dumb into it. But that means I'm gonna be way more eager to come back next time. The 40 minutes. Ew. But I'm gone. Well, actually, I'm not. Bro, these theories was long, but the Atlantis one made a lot of sense. Like, it had a lot of shit to back it up. For real, for real. I ain't gonna lie. I'm not saying, I ain't gonna say I believe, you know, because theory gonna be a theory. But, like, hey, that big got some truth to it, cuz. And then the moon landing, that's like 50-50, fake, real. And then the Antarctica shit though, I believe in that shit, folks. I think we need to leave them alone. I think everybody need to leave everybody alone and we'll all just be better off. But people don't be understanding that. So yeah, bro. I ain't gonna lie.